7 signs that you have God's favor. Have you ever wondered if you have God's favor in your life? Sometimes we go through life not realizing that God's favor is right in front of us. It's easy to overlook the subtle, yet powerful ways that God shows His love and favor. In today's message, we'll explore 7 clear signs that you are living under the favor of God. As we go through these, I believe you'll begin to see how God's favor has already been at work in your life, even if you haven't realized it yet. Let's dive into it. Number 1. You experience God's provision in unexpected ways. One of the clearest signs of God's favor is His provision. I'm not just talking about the basics like having a job or food on the table. I'm talking about those moments when God provides in ways that seem impossible or unexpected. Have you ever been in a situation where you were struggling financially or emotionally, and suddenly, out of nowhere, the solution appeared? That's not luck, that's God's favor. A perfect example of this in the Bible is the story of Elijah and the widow at Zarephath in 1 Kings 17 verse 8 to 16. There was a famine in the land, and the widow had almost nothing left. She was preparing her last meal when Elijah showed up, asking for food. Even though she had barely enough for herself and her son, she trusted Elijah's word from God, and as a result, her flour and oil never ran out. That's what God's favor looks like. When you trust in Him, He provides in ways that go beyond human understanding. God's provision doesn't always show up in the way we expect it to, but it's often far better than we imagined. Sometimes, His provision is not just about our physical needs, but about meeting us emotionally and spiritually in ways we didn't even realize we needed. Think back on your own life. Can you pinpoint times when God provided for you in ways you didn't expect? Maybe it was an opportunity that came when you least expected it. Or maybe it was a person who came into your life at the exact moment you needed them. When you start noticing these moments, you realize that God's hand has been guiding and providing for you all along. Number 2. Doors open for you that seem impossible. Have you ever had a door open that you weren't expecting? Maybe it was a job opportunity, a relationship, or something else that seemed too good to be true. When doors open for you that seem impossible, it's a sign of God's favor. Look at the story of Joseph. He was sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. By all human standards, Joseph's future looked bleak, but because God's favor was upon him, Joseph went from being a prisoner to second in command over all of Egypt. Genesis 39 verse 21 says, "But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison." It was God's favor that opened the door for Joseph to fulfill his destiny. When doors open that you didn't expect or couldn't have opened on your own, it's a sign that God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating things for your good. Sometimes, God closes doors that we thought we wanted to walk through, but it's only because He has something better waiting for us. When you learn to trust God's timing and His plans, you begin to see that His favor opens the right doors, at the right time, and for the right reasons. And here's something to remember. Sometimes, the doors God opens may lead you into situations that stretch and challenge you, but that doesn't mean they're not from Him. Often, God's favor takes us into places that push us to grow and rely on Him more deeply. Number 3. You have peace in the midst of chaos. Here's one that might surprise you. Having peace when life is chaotic is a sure sign that you have God's favor. This kind of peace doesn't come from your circumstances. It comes from knowing that God is in control. It's a supernatural peace that surpasses all understanding. As Philippians 4:7 says, "And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." Think about the story of Jesus calming the storm in Mark 4:35-41. The disciples were panicking, thinking they were going to die in the storm, but Jesus was asleep in the boat. When they woke him, he simply said, "Peace, be still," and the wind and waves obeyed him. Jesus had peace in the middle of the storm because he knew who was in control. That same peace is available to you when you have God's favor. This kind of peace is different from the world's idea of peace. The world defines peace as the absence of problems, but God's peace is the presence of His Spirit in the middle of those problems. It's the ability to remain calm, steady, and hopeful, even when everything around you seems to be falling apart. Have you ever faced a situation where you should have been overwhelmed, but somehow you felt an unexplainable calm? That's God's peace, and it's a direct result of His favor. Number 4, you have unexplainable joy. Another sign that you're living under God's favor is having unexplainable joy, even when things aren't perfect. We often think that joy is tied to our circumstances, but the truth is, real joy comes from God. It's the kind of joy that can't be shaken, no matter what's happening around you. In Nehemiah 8 verse 10, it says, "The joy of the Lord is your strength." That means your joy comes from knowing who God is, not from your circumstances. When you have God's favor, you experience a deep, abiding joy that can't be explained by what's happening in the world. This joy is not dependent on external conditions. It's rooted in your relationship with God. You see, happiness is often based on temporary moments, but joy runs much deeper. Joy doesn't disappear when life gets tough. It stays with you because it's grounded in the eternal hope that comes from Christ. Think of Paul and Silas in Acts 16. They were imprisoned for preaching the gospel, and instead of giving in to despair, they were found praying and singing hymns of praise to God. Their joy wasn't dictated by their circumstances. They were experiencing God's favor in the form of joy, even in the darkest situation. This kind of joy reflects the confidence that comes from knowing God is in control. Number 5, you experience favor with people. Another way you can tell if you have God's favor is by noticing how people treat you. Do you often find that people are willing to help you, support you, or go out of their way for you? That's not just coincidence, that's God's favor. In the book of Esther, we see how God gave Esther favor with King Xerxes. Even though she was risking her life by approaching the king without being summoned, Esther 5:2 says, "When the king saw Queen Esther standing in the court, she won favor in his sight, and he held out to her the golden scepter that was in his hand." Because of God's favor, Esther was able to save her people from destruction. When you experience favor with people, it's often a reflection of the favor you have with God. People are drawn to you, they want to help you, and they see something in you that they can't quite explain. Number 6, you receive protection from harm. God's favor often shows up in the form of protection. Have you ever been in a situation where you narrowly avoided danger? Maybe it was a car accident, a health scare, or something else, but somehow you walked away unharmed. That's not luck. That's God's hand of protection over you. In Psalm 91, God promises to protect those who trust in Him. Verse 4 says, "He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart." When you have God's favor, you can trust that He is protecting you, even in ways you don't see. God's protection is a powerful sign of His favor. It doesn't mean that nothing bad will ever happen, but it does mean that God is always watching over you, guiding and protecting you from harm. Number 7, you have a sense of purpose and direction. The final sign that you have God's favor is that you have a sense of purpose and direction in your life. You're not wandering aimlessly, unsure of where to go or what to do. Instead, you have a clear sense that God is guiding your steps, leading you towards your destiny. In Proverbs 3, verse 5 and 6, we are reminded to trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight. When you have God's favor, you don't have to worry about making all the right decisions. You can trust that God is leading you and that He has a plan for your life. When you feel a deep sense of purpose and direction, that's God's favor guiding you, showing you the path He has set before you. If you've recognized any of these signs in your life, take heart. You are living under God's favor.